Hi, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager.
And I'm Brian Michael. Today is a special episode. A little more special than the usual special episode because this is the episode where we're going to be going around the world. In other words, what it is Angela and I put together a whole big list of movies and said, how do we make this into a show? And then at one point in time, I thought, why don't we just say they're different countries? We've done Japan and a few others.
Italy,
Germany, yeah.
We didn't do Germany yet.
Yeah, sure. And then this week is England, which technically is a foreign film, but it's just around the world, so it doesn't have to be a foreign. But it's a foreign land. Does that count?
It's just it's another country other than the United States. That's
you
all.
Watch a couple of them, and they do need subtitles, so I count that as foreign.
Yeah, there you go. There you go, England.
Yes, so the mighty, wonderful, wonderful country of England that brought us David Beckham's left foot. All right, or his right foot. The first movie that we're going to be reviewing is a classic. This is Odd Man Out. It's directed by Carol Reed, who directed The Third Man and Oliver and the Third Man.
That's some range.
That is, yeah, that's one way to put it. One's a classic and the other one won Best Picture. Okay, in the 60s though, so you gotta discount that. Anyway, so this is Odd Man Out, and this stars James Mason. I won't do my impression as a member.
I love your impression of James Mason.
It is a really good one, isn't it?
It is good.
It is
Can
really
you do
good.
your whole segment in James Mason voice?
No, I wouldn't want to do that. Anyway, so he is a part of the IRA, and him and his friends go in to steal from a mill, and the robbery goes bad and he is shot and actually separated from his group. While they're running around town trying to evade police, he's trying to get back to them. Very, very simple plot. But this is Carol Reed, who is a fine filmmaker when it came to The Third Man, and we see an awful lot of this. Actually, there's some amazing and wonderful shots and shadows and angles. And James Mason, who I'm always a big fan of, I liked him.
Really
Other than
good.
when they put him in the Roman picture, I forget what it was, and they try to make him a Roman op, that did not work. Hollywood
He can be
couldn't
really,
figure it out.
really good though, and here he is.
He's really good in this one because he just has to play shot, wounded, and panicked, and a little disillusioned. And the camera work does a wonderful job of that. But we're also following his friends, which I really thought was fantastic. And I hate to say that when the thought that comes to mind goes, wow, if Hollywood remade this would be an easy remake for them to do.
Don't tell them.
Don't do that. Leave the classics
alone. You can
alone.
almost hear it with the name too, Odd Man Out.
Odd Man Out. And but I really enjoyed the tension that they build with this film without explosions, without special effects, without all the usual green screen and all this stuff. Just a simple human drama where someone obviously is injured. These other people are trying to evade police. Some people are helping them. Some people may not be. Dun, dun,
Some people may seem like they're helping them and they're really not. So
and I really enjoyed. For me, probably the first half of this movie, I really, really enjoyed, and the last quarter of it, I really enjoyed. There was a bit of a lull in the middle there. I felt maybe just kind of either I lost my energy because I was hungry, or the film just itself kind of lost
like
a little bit of
pacing. Tightened up a little bit in the middle. Yeah, I would agree with that. But for the most part, I mean, it's a film noir in a way, and it really has that. Yeah. It happens overnight, so it's all this wonderful use of shadows. And James Mason's character in particular is often, as he's about to go, he's limping along, he's hurt, he's wounded, he'll start to go on the street, he sees a police officer, and then he has to go back in the shadows, or he sees someone that might, identify him. So there's a lot of great use of the shadows, so you can really see, where The Third Man and some of the great photography came from. And there's a few scenes where it almost has a hallucinatory tone to it, like, is this really happening? There's this old man that comes out at one point and finds him and rescues him, but then it's like, what, the guy wants to barter with him. What are his intentions? It's a lot of kind of like shady characters. It's pretty neat.
Oh, now I remember the ending. We watched this movie a while back, and I'm like, what was the ending? Yeah. And I really enjoyed the ending, which I thought was actually really surprising. Right. I was really surprised by the ending. So at the very least, the ending alone, I thought was a big surprise.
The ending nails it, and I always like a good satisfying ending.
Yes, it sticks the landing there.
It sticks the landing.
My favorite scene in this film, though, was actually his friends when they were over at the lady's house.
Oh yeah, that is
a really good, because you think one thing is happening and something actually different is happening behind the scenes, and phone calls are made, and we're thinking
all the
that we're on one page
intrigue
in this,
and everything.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed that. And then pretty soon it's like, get off my stoop, move down the street. Oh no, what's going on? And I thought, oh gosh,
Yeah, that was wicked.
That's
She
terrible.
is wicked.
Oh, I love that though, because it was interesting for them to try to find safe houses because of the political group that they're involved in. There are some people that are like, yes, we're for you. Some people are against you. And then some people are kind of in the middle, but you don't really know until it happens. And maybe it's one person's for it, one person's against it in the household. So that was really interesting that they did all those things. And it was a very bold film. Oh, I did not write the year down. What year
I
was this one
did.
from?
It was 1947.
Yeah.
So this is pretty early, and this is, when the IRA is really getting going, and so it was a bold movie to make, I think, from that perspective too, because it doesn't really take sides on it. It's not pro or anti-Ireland in this regard. It's just it's more of a political intrigue. You don't really need to know anything about the politics to enjoy the film.
Did you write the third film that was down for the trilogy? Because you told me about that originally. You said it was the third man, this one, and we're kind of considered the three. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I can't remember.
I will, and I'll remember it later.
Okay,
because I'm
good.
sure I'll remember it when I don't need to know it.
So that's the interesting thing about this, because we just recently had done Oliver, and I was so disappointed by that because it was a musical and it had these big, huge lavish sets, and just the camera angles were just all wrong, and it was just a weird.
Yeah,
skewed
here this
look,
is where
and it
he
doesn't
really
work. Black and white, night shadows, rainy streets.
Thrillers. Just don't let Carol Reed, I'm going to call him Oliver Reed, do musicals. Again, a lot of people love that film. We're in the minority maybe on that. I don't know. To me, it seemed very like poor filmmaking. But here with Odd Man Out, Third Man, and the third one, I can't remember the name of that he did.
Choices are made.
They were, and there's the other one we still need to watch of his. That's supposed to be in this.
Oh,
this
yeah.
round.
Well, we'll go around the world again.
Okay.
We'll figure out.
I'm sure England made a few other films.
I'm sure we can make other film, or we'll just figure out some other list to shoehorn it in. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and remember that. So our next movie is a little hard to find because, as Roger Ebert would say, because it is known as a small
back
room from 1949 or Hour of Glory. I kind of like both titles. That's why I had a hard time finding it when I was looking through IMDb to get information, and then I had to look it up by the directors. You may have heard of them if you watched the show, Pressburger and Powell. If you haven't, write the names down, Pressburger and Powell.
Great
wonderful,
filmmakers.
Amazing filmmakers, amazing directors. Some easily in the pantheon. If you can fit like the 50 directors on Mount Rushmore, they would be in there. And 20. And so this stars Sam Rice and Kathleen Byron, who had worked with Pressburger Powell before in Black Narcissus, which is an amazing film. Watch that one as well.
I think the character Sam Rice, David Farr, is the actor.
Me. That's right. That was his character's name. And so what this is Sam Rice character, is someone who's a bomb expert. And so the Germans are now sending this, or going to be having this major weapon used against England, and he's the one that's trying to figure out how to actually defuse it and how to retaliate against it. Problem is, he also has a time bomb within himself because he is an alcoholic and has problems with concentration and different things. In fact, and being able to function in life because of his addiction. He also has a woman in his life that is. She's across the hall, but she's never really across the hall. We don't see her apartment. We see his apartment an awful lot. But I remember her being across the hall. Is that what it was?
She always comes over to his apartment.
So we don't see her apartment. It's kind of like it's kind of a one day at a time. We never know where Schneider lived. Anyway, so she's trying to help him through all of the situations as well. Mm-hmm. This is another film that does a great job. Of course, we're in the hands of masters. That does a great job of showing that tension and showing, him trying to figure these things out, but also having his personal life, ticking away at too. And all of those shots, as you reminded me, that whenever he goes home, there's the bottle, which he has out there.
And and Powell and Pressburger use this great photography. They really, are using focus. This bottle is just looming large. Sometimes the
literally
bottle, looming large. So there's this great kind of almost psychedelic scene in 1949. If you can
which
have
they
psychedelic,
do a lot of, like in the Red Shoes.
Yeah, they did a lot of that, where the bottle becomes so large and it looks like it's about to, it's going to be like Godzilla, like
so
the bottle
cool.
of alcohol is going to like fall over and topple him.
Yes.
Great sequences. And the romance here I thought was actually very believable. They're adults who are truly in love with each other and they have physical chemistry. They were in Black Narcissus together, these two actors, which is very interesting. Not as love interests at all in that film, because she was a nun in that film. But very interesting that he used these same two characters who had smaller parts in that film as the leads in this one. And disarming bombs again. sequence. So here we have the intrigue where the tension, and there is a great scene. It's funny. This kind of connects with Mission Impossible where they have to disarm a bomb. But there is a sequence where he has to disarm.
Mission Impossible, that was weeks ago.
Yes, but yes, that's
You're
true.
still thinking about that movie.
But movies like Mission Impossible, where you have this big sequence, and now you see it here in 1949, a big sequence where someone has to disarm a bomb, and you see it. It's a lot of tension. You see the sweat pouring off of his face. You see, and this sequence in this film is fantastic because of the way they have to do it. And this is, old style disarming of bombs. So, really interesting. I'm curious though how you think about their films. Like they have their beautiful color films like Black Narcissus and The Red Shoes, which they're really famous for. And then this one, which to me fits more in the category of a film like I Know Where I'm Going, which I also loved of theirs. That's in the, more of the black and white, a little bit more folksy.
I do love their color films a little bit more. They do have a little bit more punch to them in terms of just the look of that, because they always did a great job of using that color to tell their stories. Because I think of something like Peeping Tom, and it's absolutely amazing. So that I do love that because it's easier. When you take just a still of that, you can easily break down each of their scenes. But I do like this, and I would put it up there with that one as well. And I think it's a fine film. Again, this one isn't as hard to find sometimes as some of the films we talk about on the show.
It is on Criterion. I don't know if I can say that.
What?
I think almost all of Powell and Pressburger films are.
It's the only way you can possibly find them.
That's how you find them.
So.
There's no other way. I have to. It's not advertising for them. I'm just saying that's where you find them. They're all of their film. If you want to know about Powell and Pressburger's films, they're on Criterion Collection. So.
And if you want to learn about film, that's actually a pretty good place to start. And there's always a commentary on there. That's its own private little film school is there as well. So, take a look out for that one. There's a lot of good recommendations in there. I really did like their chemistry together, and I really enjoyed his performance because you really felt that as soon as he came home. Boy, it was right there.
Yeah, no,
it was just right there.
Realistic.
And it wasn't necessarily him just, I'm really thirsty or just,
No, he just seemed
that.
like
constantly, that was a nagging at him. It was
he just seemed like he was wound tight all the time because of this addiction. I thought it was really
What a great idea. I mean, that's just a great idea for a story.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay, so we're going in chronological order, moving backwards. We started in 1947. Now we went for 1949. So our next film is Kess from 1969, directed by Ken Loach. It's about a young working class boy who is bullied and has difficulty at home and finds solace in the company of his pet falcon, which is also called Kess. And it's set in the area of England called Yorkshire, so some different dialects and accents here. So I was very grateful in this case for the subtitles. You mentioned at the beginning of the film, these may not be foreign films, but in this case you need some subtitles. And in fact, this film, when it first came out, did not get good distribution in the U.S., in part because of the fact that the distributor was worried that people wouldn't be able to understand the film, which is too bad because now it's considered a seminal film in the history of English social realism films, which went on to have a lot of great champions like Mike Leigh, but Ken Loach was one of the first ones to do it. And the film, he went on to make a lot of other acclaimed films.
Still making films.
I, Daniel Blake, just last year, which was fantastic. The Wind That Shakes the Barley. He did a film called Riff Raff, which also needed subtitles, that came out in the 90s and actually was released in theaters with subtitles because it was so hard to understand. But this film is just, it's very hard watch at time, but the little boy who plays Billy, David Bradley is the young actor, is very good.
Man, is he good.
And he does not play he is not the cutesy, it is not that type of child actor. This is a rough and tumble kid who isn't always very likable, in part because he's been bullied and harassed his whole life. And he doesn't really have a lot going on. He's at this age, it seems really young to us, where he is at school leaving age, where he has the choice to leave school and just go off and work in the mine, because that's what the town where he lives, that's what you do, or he can stay in school. And he doesn't really want to go into the mines, but he doesn't really care to stay in school.
Because he's a child.
Yes.
He's still a kid.
I know, and he has to think about that.
This.
Yeah, it's really
hard. And this is really where the hawk kind of comes in. And you're still dealing with innocence here. And what I really liked about the film is, it isn't Disney-fied, which is not necessarily always a bad thing, but it's very matter of fact. It is very realistic. The only flaw, really, I found in this movie was the score. Every once in a while, someone didn't give them notes to let them know that this was either a TV movie or it wasn't a Disney film, because some of it's kind of, I don't know. It didn't fit the mood for me. And it was a little corny, but a flute, and
there was some flute. Yeah,
yeah.
I think that was the time period.
His performance is absolutely fantastic. You really feel for this kid. We're going to talk about another child performer here in a little bit. That's as absolutely wonderful as well. And I do really like what he's going through. And, he's having to sit down and do this interview about his job and his future, where they're just, you're a kid, but here's their course on life. And he's having a hard time concentrating. One, because everyone thinks he's irresponsible, but he's trying to get home at 4 o'clock because that's when he needs to take out his bird. That's when he needs to feed his bird. That's where his concentration's on. It's actually a very responsible kid because he's taking this bird, he's trained this bird.
He's taking it very seriously.
And the wonderful, and I love that sequence because he's just like, yeah, and they're like, are you paying attention? And he's like, yeah, sure, and he does it with a lot of people, and they just think that he's just this absent-minded adolescent. His teacher at one point in time says, you're not paying attention, tell me about yourself. And the kid's like, he has a bird, and he's like, well, tell us about the bird. And as he describes the bird, he's like, come up here in front of the class, now write down that word. I've never heard this word. What is that? And he's writing it out, and he's turning it into a lesson right in front of our eyes, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
That moment was so inspiring.
That was such a beautiful scene.
I got really choked up in that sequence.
It really gave him the spotlight. Let this kid really shine. He discussed this, and everyone's like, "Wow, really cool!" And then immediately goes out in the playground, and some kid picks on him, shoves him, and then a teacher. This is back in the day, y'all. The teacher smacks this other student and shoves him. Is like, hey, he's not like being a bully. This is what it's like being bullied. So I thought that was really interesting.
It nice he had one adult who actually stood up for him. There's the one teacher, because I was worried, gosh, all the adults in this movie were just terrible up until that point. And the other kids too, honestly, because he doesn't really have any friends. And I thought it was great that this one teacher at least tried to stand up for it, because he kind of sees some potential in him. I think.
And then he goes out to see the bird, and he was like, that was fantastic. That was certainly the highlight. And, the ending of this film, and I don't want to give anything away, I don't want to talk about it, but it's so absolutely matter of fact, it might be a little disarming in many ways. And it kind of surprised me in what it did. And the way it ended was, I wish the credits would have given us just a little bit more time, because I really wanted more time with them a little bit.
It seemed sort of appropriate, but yeah, it would kind of hit you in the gut a little bit.
Gosh, I mean, this is an absolutely wonderful, wonderful film. I really love this film, but you got to watch it with subtitles, because that accent is really, really thick.
Unless you're very good at English dialects, I would suggest watching with subtitles. But it isn't super difficult to find. You can find it on streaming.
It's streaming. It's online.
And it is another Criterion collection, maybe. So
is it Criterion? I did not know that.
Cass says yes. So we will move on to our next movie. We're moving into the 70s now with Get Carter by director Mike Hodges, and this stars Michael Caine as a gangster who finds out when his brother dies under mysterious circumstances. He goes back to his hometown to investigate what's going on. So he's sort of playing detective in this role, but he's a heavy. And he's also going back to his hometown, which leads this other kind of element to it of all these people are like, oh hey Jack Carter, we haven't seen you in a while, and so he's got this like history with the people in the town. So there's kind of all these layers there. Speaking of movies where it was hard to understand what was going on at times, there were quite a few times in the movie where I turned to you and I said, what is happening now? This movie, on one hand, Michael Caine gives a great performance. He's a vicious, unlikable anti-hero. He's the guy you're following, but he's not that nice of a guy, and it's not just because he's a gangster. He's kind of a jerk. He doesn't treat people all that well. No. He's kind of sneering. He doesn't really like the people from his hometown. He looks down on them because they stayed behind and he's moved on with his life. But he doesn't like the other tough guys either, so he's kind of not nice to anyone. So it's an interesting character. But then the plot goes all over the place, and I had a hard time at certain times following what was going on, and I'm not usually that's too simple to be able to follow these things.
Yeah, the first, half hour for the millennials out there, you got to get used to Alfred being a heavy. It's very weird and it's a little strange because Michael Caine is,
he was dashing in his day.
No, sure, but he was never a tough guy. You never really saw him. Oh, maybe with the one movie I saw when I was a kid. But anyway, for the most part, you kind of see him as this upstanding Englishman who's always, uses words. And so you kind of have to go through that little bit of that transition. And actually, he's pretty good at it. And it does feel like, and I don't mean this in a bad way, it does feel like kind of like a Charles Bronson or a Clint Eastwood type of movie. One they always wanted to give it to Frank Sinatra, and he turned it down, and they gave it to somebody else, and he did a great job. I just never saw Frank Sinatra as a heavy. That was it was just kind of different to see this coming from England. I did like it, but there was several times where it was kind of, where are we going, and let's kind of pull in here, and you may want to, it's one thing to not let the audience know to kind of be surprising, but it's another thing where you do it too long and then we're lost. And you kind of lose interest a little bit there, here and there. But I liked all the characters that he ran into. For the most part, I liked his hometown. There were some, pretty funny sequences, even though pretty vicious. The ending I liked, but I was a little surprised by I just kind of thought that was just, again, another one that was just kind of quick and short, but this is a different time
This
and
one
era.
I kind of thought just went on a little too long again.
Yeah.
I felt like it could have been shortened, and I know it's considered a classic now, but then we looked up Hodges, and he didn't do a whole lot.
And then they remade it with Sylvester Stallone, and boy, am I going to watch that if I die and go to hell. I don't know, but I'm not going to see that movie. No. Please don't put in a viewer's pick for that movie. I won't watch it.
We won't watch it. We'll just look at it and go, that's nice that you submitted that. We're not
Thank
going
you.
to watch it. Thank you. We'll take that under consideration. We've been doing this show, 16 years? We'll look at that in another 16 years or so. We get really,
oh boy.
have we run out of movies to watch in the world?
No. Yeah,
We'll
go around the world a few more times on my knees.
Yeah.
So
so you can recommend it, though.
I can recommend it. I think it's a 3-star movie. It's an interesting film. You know, when you read, actually, when I did a lot more reading on it, I thought that some of the backstories of what happened before and after the film and the distribution was far more fascinating sometimes than the film itself. So I think that's where it kind of got. That's where it got. It was kind of a film that was kind of set a standard and kind of created a little genre.
It's like 2.5 for me. I couldn't say I want to watch it again, and I guess that's what it just kind of dragged on. And I liked some of the set pieces, but a lot of the action wasn't even that convincing, and his character was so unlikable. After a while, I was just like, Michael Caine, come on.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Michael Caine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you're going to do your Michael Caine impression instead of your James Mason impression.
Not an impression if you use his name.
Okay.
So our last film is This Is England. Oh, Lord.
2006.
2006. We're up in the aughts. And this is directed by Shane Meadows. This tells a story of a young man who's actually a young boy who's bullied. Boy, their school system's tough. Is bullied and pushed around in school until he meets some older friends. And his friends turn out to be skinheads. And when I read the description of the movie, and I said, how do you figure they turn out to be skinheads? Because at first there's kind of they don't necessarily look like skinheads because some of them are of a different race, and so you thought, well,
they are skinheads. They are skinheads, but they're not what we know of it today.
Exactly.
As skinheads, yes.
So then someone returns home that was the leader of the group. Now is taking a more drastic approach and is putting them in a different direction that a lot of them aren't comfortable with, and so they leave the skinheads before being too much of skinheads. Okay. So we get to see this young boy who is brought along this path that, you watch and go, oh my God, where are your parents? Mom's there. She didn't like the haircut.
That's the only thing.
But they're really nice to him, and then we never see her again, which I think probably tells a story in itself. I thought first it would be really hard to watch this because of the subject matter and because who he's hanging around with and because I really don't want to spend my time with these people. But they do a really good job of showing how this can happen, how some of the people, fall into this type of life or fall into this group, and how some of them pull away from it.
Right.
What really anchors this film is the trust in the actors. I think all of the actors do a really fine job. The young man, the star of the movie, is really good, and
He's
you really pull in. And there's so many times where they just drew a close up on his face, and you can see him having a good time and being a kid, and you're like, oh no. And other times you see, certainly there's an ending shot in this film that reminds me a little bit of 400 Blows, where he looks directly into the camera, and you know exactly what's happening, what's being said there.
It is interesting. Yeah, there I can see
Very
the
impressive.
similarity.
Now, this film has been on the cusp, on the outside. I had heard about this film. I've heard about this film back when a streaming service was really good about telling you about films. It constantly told me about this one. It was someone that constantly was popped up, and you may want to check this out. But some of the reviews I looked up at the time weren't very good for it, so I was really surprised by that. Watching this film, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It's a 4-star film for me. I really loved it, and once I got in it, boy, I was in the film to the end.
I thought it was really fascinating. It's actually based on Shane Meadows' actual life. It's semi-autobiographical, so some of this happened to him. It's actually interesting, and we didn't do this on purpose, similarities between this and Kess, the earlier film we talked about with the little boy. Both filmed in Yorkshire, so the same region, so similar dialect, although I found the Kess more difficult to understand. And both have these young boys as the anchors who have, who are outcasts, and that's why they fall into these situations. In Kess, and the boy in Kess, in Billy's case, he goes towards, isolation and, befriending this bird. In the case of the young boy in this film, he finds this group of skinheads, and they were called non-racist skinheads. I know that sounds, but that's actually true. And
one's Jamaican. That's what threw me
off.
The
skinheads culture started as, it was actually just groups that were celebrating an interest in Afro-Caribbean culture and included ska music music, all of that. That was,
you know,
the early Clash. So early Clash stuff, you know, a lot of the punk scene in England came from this movement. But then what happened was the National Front, the neo-Nazis in England kind of took that group and used them for their own political purpose. They took the alienation and the anger that some of the skinheads had, and you see that in the film. So you see the group split, and they actually became skinhead groups that fought with each other. The non-racist skinheads and the racist skinheads would fight with each other. So that's a little bit of the history there. And he's right here at this juncture where this is happening. It's set in the early 80s. It's not set in 2006, so it's a period piece. And he's dealing with this. And so you see the guys he befriends at the beginning, now he's having to choose between these two groups of friends. And he's also had tragedy in his life with the loss of his father, which is weighing very heavily on him. So I just thought it was really interesting, a really great film, and surprise, you know, because I did hear about this when it came out, but it fits in with all these other films we're doing too.
Yeah, so. Pretty darn good.
Why are those kids getting bullied in England?
Well, I know, yeah, you know, and I thought that the performances were very charismatic, and I really liked that, and you could see where
such good child actors.
Yeah, and when they take him under their wing, you know, when he's being bullied, and they kind of pick on one of the other kids, which I felt really bad for him as well. And then of course he makes his decision based on how he was treated by that group, in which you totally see that. So it's very realistic, and I do enjoy that. A lot of the actors actually I kind of followed, and there actually were some sequels made to this film that kind of follow through.
Really?
Yes. So I totally want to check those out, or pseudo sequels that I really want to check out. Yeah, it's a great cast, and I'm looking forward to seeing a little bit more about.
And another young child actor who again plays, you know, when he first started, I'm like, that's a little punk. I mean, he actually is sort of a punk, but he, you know what I mean, he's a little bit of he's not always the most likable kid.
Exactly.
You know, he's a little bit snarly, and
well,
you know,
kids are that way.
Right. I'm saying he's not playing the camera. He's not all like cuteness and like dimples and like trying to be, you know, with your dimples, but you know, he's not trying to be this like cute kid actor. It's not like Macaulay Culkin in Homeland, like, oh gee whiz, I'm a bratty kid, but look how cute I am. No, he's just kind of actually a bratty kid, but he's real. You know, he seems very down. You know, he has real issues and real struggles, and we get to experience those with him. So. Yes, some great films from England.
Some absolutely fantastic films. So to recap, I believe we can recommend all of the films. Odd Man Out, directed by Carol Reed. The Small Back Room, or House of Glory by Pressburger Powell. There's Kess, there's Kit Carter, and as well as This Is England. So there's lots of homework for you to do. Let's get on it. So we certainly we want you to subscribe on YouTube. You want to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. Certainly, you can send in a viewer's pick at realfilmsnobs.com. You can watch us in Salem, Corvallis, as well as Silverton. You can listen to us on KMUZ. We have some wonderful sponsors. Please look at our credits as they roll by, as well as the names of our hardworking crew and my fabulous co-host. We want to thank you for watching. As always, have a great day and great movies.